They thought it would be easy. The cameras were on. The smiles were rehearsed. The jokes were already waiting. A world-famous champion was sitting right there, calm, quiet, unbothered. They assumed silence meant weakness. They assumed respect could be taken. But what they didn't realize was this: Muhammad Ali wasn't preparing to defend himself. He was preparing to end the moment. He let the laughter stretch just long enough to expose itself. He allowed the mockery to feel comfortable, careless, confident. And then he spoke. Not loudly, not emotionally, not defensively. One sentence. That was all it took. The smiles disappeared. The room shifted. And the interview never recovered. This isn't a story about television. This is a lesson about power, the kind that doesn't shout, doesn't argue, and doesn't chase approval. If you've ever been underestimated, if you've ever been mocked while staying silent, if you've ever wondered when to speak and when to wait, this moment from Muhammad Ali will change how you see power forever. 1. Silence is not weakness. It's preparation. When the mockery started, most people expected Muhammad Ali to react immediately. That's what humiliation usually demands. A quick defense, a sharp comeback, a visible emotional response. Silence, in moments like that, is often misunderstood as fear. But Ali understood something most people never learn. Silence can be the most dangerous form of control. He sat there while the host smiled, while the tone grew casual and dismissive, while the audience sensed that the interview was drifting toward ridicule. Ali did not interrupt. He did not correct. He did not flinch. Every second of silence did something powerful. It allowed the other side to keep talking. And when people keep talking, they reveal more than they intend. They expose their assumptions, their arrogance, and their need for validation. Silence creates space. In that space, pressure builds. The room grows uncomfortable, not for the one who is quiet, but for the ones filling the air with noise. Ali let that pressure rise. He let the joke stretch a little too long. He let the mockery cross the invisible line, where it no longer looked clever, only insecure. This is the kind of silence that takes discipline. It requires emotional strength to resist the urge to prove yourself. Most people speak too early because they are trying to protect their image. Ali didn't protect his image. He trusted it. He knew who he was long before the cameras turned on. Because of that certainty, he could wait. Silence, when chosen deliberately, sharpens your words before you ever speak them. It forces your opponent to show their hand while you keep yours hidden. By the time Ali finally spoke, the room was already leaning toward him. Not because he had said anything yet, but because his restraint had quietly shifted the balance of power. This lesson goes far beyond television. In real life, the person who reacts first often loses control of the situation. Silence buys you time. Time clarifies intention. Time strips emotion out of your response. And when you finally speak, your words don't sound reactive. They sound inevitable. Ali's silence wasn't passive. It was active preparation. He was not waiting because he was unsure. He was waiting because he knew that when he spoke, it would land with weight. And when it did, there would be nothing left to argue. That is the difference between weakness and wisdom. Weakness stays quiet out of fear. Strength stays quiet out of certainty. 2. Never fight on someone else's emotional terms. The moment mockery enters a room, an invisible trap is set. The goal is no longer truth or understanding. It is reaction. The person doing the mocking wants control, and the easiest way to gain it is by pulling you into their emotional frame. Anger, defensiveness, sarcasm, embarrassment, any of these would have served their purpose. Muhammad Ali refused to give them that satisfaction. Ali recognized the emotional terrain immediately. The interviewer's tone wasn't curiosity, it was provocation dressed as humor. Responding with emotion would have meant accepting the interviewer's rules. It would have turned Ali into a participant in someone else's game. Instead, he stepped outside the frame entirely. This is a critical distinction. You can answer a question without adopting the emotional energy behind it. Most people don't realize this. They hear disrespect and respond with matching intensity. thinking they are standing up for themselves. In reality, they've already lost control by allowing someone else to dictate how they feel. Ali did the opposite. He stayed emotionally neutral, not cold, not detached, just centered. By doing that, he quietly reversed the power dynamic. The interviewer was trying to elevate himself by lowering Ali. Ali elevated himself by remaining untouched. When you refuse to react emotionally, something unsettling happens to the other person. Their words start to feel hollow. Their confidence weakens. The energy they were projecting has nowhere to land. Mockery needs an emotional mirror to survive. Without it, it collapses. Ali's calm wasn't accidental. It came from deep self-knowledge. He didn't need approval from the host, the audience, or the moment. That independence made him impossible to manipulate. He answered from his values, not from their tone. In everyday life, this lesson is decisive. Arguments escalate not because people disagree, but because emotions hijack the conversation. The moment you stay grounded while someone else becomes reactive, the entire dynamic shifts. You are no longer defending yourself. You are leading the interaction. Ali never fought the interviewer's emotions. He didn't deny them, mock them, or mirror them. He simply refused to carry them. And in doing so, he forced the conversation onto his terms. Calm, controlled, and unshakable. That is emotional mastery. And emotional mastery is real power. 3. One sentence can carry more power than 1,000 arguments. Most people believe power comes from saying more explanations, more justifications, more words stacked on top of words, hoping something will finally convince the room. Muhammad Ali understood the opposite truth. He didn't overwhelm the interview with facts. He didn't build a long defense. He didn't try to win point by point. He spoke one sentence, and that sentence ended everything. Why? Because arguments are usually born from uncertainty. When people aren't fully grounded in who they are, they talk too much. They keep adding words because they're trying to arrive at confidence through speech. Ali didn't need to arrive anywhere. He was already there. A single sentence, when it comes from certainty, carries weight. It forces silence. It leaves no open door for debate because it doesn't beg for agreement. It states reality and stands behind it. Ali's words worked because they were not reactive. They were not defensive. They were not designed to impress. They were designed to conclude. There is a subtle but important difference between trying to win an argument and making a statement that ends one. Arguments invite response. Strong statements remove the need for one. Ali's sentence wasn't something to fight against, it was something to sit with. This is why over-explaining weakens your position. Every extra sentence gives the other side something to grab onto, twist, or challenge. Precision removes that leverage. When your words are few, intentional, and grounded, they leave no loose edges. Ali didn't speak to fill space. He spoke to define it. In life, the people who command respect are rarely the loudest or the longest-winded. They are the ones whose words feel final. When they speak, the room understands that nothing more needs to be added. That is the power of one sentence spoken from clarity. Not because it is clever, not because it is sharp, but because it is complete. 4. Let your character speak louder than your credentials. In moments of mockery, most people reach for proof. Titles, achievements, numbers. They try to remind the room why they deserve respect. That impulse comes from a quiet fear. The fear that if you don't announce your worth, it will be ignored. Muhammad Ali never fell into that trap. He could have listed everything: world titles, historic fights, records that would never be touched again. He could have asserted dominance by reminding everyone exactly who he was in the boxing world. But he chose something far more powerful: restraint. Ali understood that credentials argue for you only when your character already commands the room. Without character, achievements sound like insecurity. With character, even silence feels authoritative. What made that interview moment so striking was not what Ali said about himself, but what he didn't feel the need to say. He didn't demand respect. He embodied it. His posture, his patience, his timing, all of it communicated certainty without declaration. People often confuse recognition with respect. Recognition comes from titles and applause. Respect comes from consistency. Ali had been the same man in public and in private, in victory and in criticism. That integrity meant he didn't have to defend his name. His presence did it for him. When your character is solid, mockery feels misplaced. It doesn't stick. It looks awkward. The audience senses the imbalance. They see someone trying to diminish a person who is clearly standing on firm ground. This lesson extends beyond fame. In everyday life, the moment you start listing reasons you matter, you begin negotiating your value. Ali never negotiated. He allowed others to realize it on their own. True authority doesn't announce itself. It arrives, stays composed, and lets the room adjust. That is why Ali didn't need credentials in that moment. His character had already spoken. 5. Mockery collapses when faced with calm confidence. Mockery is never really about humor. It's about control. It's an attempt to elevate one person by shrinking another, to gain attention by creating imbalance in the room. Mockery survives on one thing above all else: reaction. Without reaction, it has no fuel. Muhammad Ali understood this instinctively. He didn't challenge the jokes. He didn't correct the tone. He didn't show irritation or offense. Instead, he remained calm, and that calm became uncomfortable. When someone expects you to flinch and you don't, their confidence begins to leak. Their words start to sound excessive. The laughter feels forced. What was meant to be clever suddenly looks insecure. Calm confidence has a way of exposing intention without saying a word. Ali's presence in that moment carried a quiet certainty. He wasn't trying to dominate the room. He didn't need to. His confidence was internal, not performative. And because it didn't seek validation, it couldn't be undermined. This is why mockery collapses in the face of calm confidence. The person mocking is trying to control the emotional climate. When you remain steady, they lose their leverage. They can't escalate without revealing themselves, and they can't retreat without losing face. Ali let that tension build naturally. He allowed the moment to reach its own breaking point. And when he finally spoke, the shift was immediate. Not because he attacked, but because his calm had already done the work. In life, this lesson is crucial. People will test you to see if they can move you. They'll push buttons, use humor, or disguise disrespect as playfulness. The moment you react emotionally, you hand them control. The moment you remain grounded, you take it back. Calm confidence doesn't shout. It doesn't chase approval. It doesn't explain itself. It simply stands there until the noise around it collapses. That is why Ali didn't need to overpower the mockery. He outlasted it. 6. Intelligence is knowing exactly when to speak. Timing is an invisible force. You can say the right words and still lose the moment if you say them too early. You can speak the truth and still weaken it if you rush. Most people never realize this. They focus on what to say, not when to say it. Muhammad Ali understood timing so deeply that it became one of his greatest weapons. In that live television moment, Ali did not speak when he could have. He spoke when he should have. That difference is everything. The mockery began lightly. A smile, a tone that sounded playful, but carried an edge. Many people would have jumped in immediately, trying to correct the energy before it escalated. That instinct feels smart, but it's actually driven by discomfort. It comes from the need to regain control quickly. Ali resisted that urge. He allowed the moment to unfold. Why? Because premature speech weakens authority. When you speak too early, you interrupt the process by which others reveal themselves. You cut short their exposure. You rescue them from their own excess. Ali didn't do that. He allowed the interviewer to continue, to become more comfortable, to cross the line where mockery no longer looked clever, only desperate. This is where intelligence shows itself. Not in clever comebacks, but in patience. Ali knew that the room needed to feel the imbalance before it could recognize it. If he had spoken too soon, the audience might have sided with the host. By waiting, he let the discomfort shift naturally. The silence stretched. The jokes lingered too long. The tone soured. The audience sensed it before he ever said a word. Timing also stripped emotion out of his response. By waiting, Ali ensured that his words would not sound reactive. They would sound measured, inevitable. When he finally spoke, it felt less like a response and more like a verdict. This is a rare form of intelligence, the ability to sit with tension without trying to dissolve it prematurely. Most people are afraid of silence because silence feels like loss of control. Ali understood that silence, when chosen deliberately, is control. There is another layer to this lesson. Speaking too early often reveals insecurity. It signals that you are anxious to be understood, anxious to be respected, anxious to protect your image. Ali showed none of that. His stillness communicated certainty. It told the room that he was not threatened by misunderstanding. He trusted that clarity would arrive on its own at the right moment. And when that moment came, it was unmistakable. His sentence didn't interrupt the conversation. It ended it. That is the ultimate proof of timing. When words arrive at the exact right moment, they don't invite response. They close the door. In life, this lesson is transformative. Arguments escalate because people speak while emotions are still rising. Decisions fail because they are announced before the ground is ready. Authority is lost because words are rushed instead of placed. The most intelligent people are not the fastest speakers in the room. They are the ones who wait until the moment cannot ignore them. Ali waited until the room leaned forward, until the mockery had exhausted itself, until silence was already asking for his voice. Then he spoke once, and because of when he spoke, what he said carried a weight no argument could challenge. That is intelligence at its highest level. Not speed, not volume, but timing. Real power ends the conversation, it doesn't extend it. Most people believe power is proven by dominance, by winning debates, by having the last word, by continuing the exchange until the other side gives up. But that belief misunderstands what real power looks like. Muhammad Ali showed something far rarer in that live television moment: power that didn't need to keep going. When Ali finally spoke, the interview didn't escalate. It didn't turn into a shouting match. It didn't transform into a battle of egos. It simply stopped. Not because time ran out, not because the host cut it short, but because there was nothing left to say. That is the clearest sign of authority. Weak power prolongs conflict. It feeds on engagement. It needs constant reinforcement. Real power arrives, clarifies the truth, and closes the space for argument. Ali's sentence wasn't designed to humiliate. It wasn't crafted to win applause. It wasn't meant to trap the interviewer. It did something far more final. It redefined the situation so completely that continuing the mockery became impossible. The tone shifted. The energy collapsed. The control changed hands. This kind of power doesn't rely on intimidation. It relies on clarity. When clarity enters a room, confusion has nowhere to hide. When truth is spoken calmly and confidently, exaggeration loses its grip. The interviewer could not push further without exposing himself. Silence followed, because silence was the only honest response left. What made this moment historic wasn't the cleverness of Ali's words, but their finality. They didn't open a debate, they closed one. That's why the interview didn't recover. It didn't need to. The moment had already passed its natural ending. In everyday life, people often mistake endurance for strength. They keep arguing, keep explaining, keep responding long after the point has been made. In doing so, they dilute their own authority. Ali showed the opposite approach. He spoke once, clearly, and allowed the moment to conclude. There is courage in knowing when to stop. There is confidence in not chasing validation. There is strength in letting silence do the rest. Real power does not beg to be recognized. It does not chase agreement. It does not linger unnecessarily. It arrives, defines reality, and leaves. That is why Ali didn't need to dominate the interview for another minute. He had already done what real power does best. He ended the conversation without force. And that is the final lesson. Not every battle needs to be fought. Not every insult deserves a response. And not every moment requires more words. Sometimes, the strongest thing you can do is speak once and let the world fall quiet afterward. That moment on live television didn't become legendary. because of what Muhammad Ali achieved that day. It became legendary because of what he refused to do. He refused to argue. He refused to defend his ego. He refused to lower himself to noise. Instead, he showed the world a different kind of strength, the kind that stays calm when tested, waits when provoked, and speaks only when the moment is ready. In a world that rewards loud reactions and endless opinions, Ali reminded us that the most powerful people don't fight for attention, they command it quietly. So, the next time you're mocked, underestimated, or pushed to react, remember this: you don't need to explain yourself to everyone. You don't need to win every argument. And sometimes, the strongest move you can make is one calm sentence spoken at the right moment that ends the conversation forever. That is real power.